getting outside, there's all these studies. You're meant to do manual labor. You're meant to walk a few miles. I mean, for years I got so busy I just quit exercising.
Did you know that soil is actually an antidepressant?
Say that again?
Soil is actually an antidepressant. When you go out to garden, don't wear gloves. Get your hands in the soil because that's the natural antidepressant. And so
I didn't know that.
Sunshine. Yes, sunshine is also an antidepressant.
I knew sunshine was. I knew sunshine through the eyes and the skin. But for those that don't know, there's thousands of studies, scientific fact. That's why in Scandinavian places where it's dark, they have the real bright walls and artificial sunlight indoors because they have the highest suicide rates. That's now been reversed. So yes, the eye stalks, as you know, grow when you're an embryo out of the brain. So the eyes really are the brain. It's the gateway to the soul, as they say. And so they need to have that sunlight. They're designed to do that for hormone levels inside to trigger the different endocrine levels, to trigger the different endorphins for your sex drive, for weight loss, everything. The key is sunlight, but also the skin does it, not just the vitamin A it produces. Go ahead.
Yes. Also, to socially interact with people more, really, really stress and depression, as long as you're interacting, especially if you're outside engaging in activities, like you mentioned, golf or gardening with somebody. Or just
you're supposed to sit on your front porch and barbecue and laugh and joke about the neighbor and, laugh and joke about yourself. You're meant to go out and work in the fields all day. That's when you're happy. You're not happy watching TV.
Right.
And you're not happy sitting on your butt. And you're certainly not going to be happy popping Prozac in the Fluorine family.
That's true. And also these omega-3 fatty acids are good for people who are depressed or stressed.
And notice how they say, don't get sun, don't eat fatty acids. All these things they know are essential for us. They tell us not to have them.
Well, I would have people Google omega-3 and find out how they can help these people who claim that they're, feeling depressed or down. Of course, everybody has times when they're stressed and depressed, and some people's lives have more sadness in it than others. But to do all these things, to engage in exercise and to engage in social contact, to get outside in the sun, to dig in the soil, to combat all this sitting around thinking about how terrible things are, because depression involves a lot of people thinking in negative, so they have to get out and think positive.
Well, ma'am, I agree with you, but there's also a kind of a wild card in that. If you're not just being negative, but fighting corruption.
Oh, and that's different. That engages you. You need to be engaged in something worthwhile and meaningful. Like you're engaged in this fighting corruption, and SSRI stories is engaged in fighting for people who might possibly kill somebody or kill themselves on these drugs. That helps too.
That gives you a lot of energy, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does.
It's a very deep fount of energy. Go ahead.
So anyway, we were going back again to the index of SSRI stories, and then there were 17 cases as you're scrolling down past all the school shootings. Then you come to about 58 journal articles that will tell you some of the odd things about Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, Celexa, Luvox, and so on, these SSRIs that you don't really know about. And so there's about 58 journal articles, and then as you scroll further, there's 55 highly publicized cases of people who were on these antidepressants and did something very strange. For instance, O.J. Simpson, was on a double dose of Prozac during the time of the murder. Did you know that?
Yes.
Oh, you did know that. Okay. Mm-hmm. That comedian Phil Hartman's wife, who was shot by his wife, she was on Zoloft.
No, they always are.
Oh, yeah. There's so many of them that it's just, really unbelievable.
I don't think I've ever seen a high-profile mass shooting or one of these where they're not on it.
Well, yes.
Very rare. I can't remember one where it wasn't.
Well, that's why I put the school shootings up at the top of the page, because they are something new. We really didn't have these school shootings until Prozac was introduced in 1988. The very first school shooting involved an antidepressant, Lori Dan, in Chicago, Illinois. She went into a third-grade classroom and shot 7 students. 1 died and 6 were seriously injured. And she was on the antidepressant Anafranil, which is similar to an SSRI, even though it's a tricyclic antidepressant. It's much more powerful, and it was the first antidepressant to be granted approval for obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, which a lot of these antidepressants are now the SSRIs. And she committed that first school shooting in 1989. And, of course, she did have some problems, too. But here's the thing. If you're having some problems, why exacerbate it by giving you a drug that causes mania and psychosis and hallucinations?
No, you're right. This just adds fuel. For anybody out there who... Here's the next big issue I want to bring up to you. As I'm sure you know, they're now in all the women's magazines, because I read them in my wife's magazines, going, you're not supposed to have a period. That's abnormal. A woman's cycle's not right. You need to go on this SSRI for that. Every time anybody I know in my family or neighbors who has a car wreck and breaks a leg, they come in and push a flu shot and putting them on some Prozac drugs for their, quote, depression.
Right.
I mean, they're pushing it on stubbed toes now, and they also mail Prozac free out in samples in the mail. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah.
I mean, these are nothing but LSD pushers.
Right. There was a terrible case in Dallas of a award-winning school teacher, Lisa Marie Smith, who was on Celexa for PMS, and she set her house on fire and murdered her 2 sons. She's in prison now. She tried to kill herself, too. So, I mean, this is an example. Here she was, an award-winning school teacher, loved children, loved teaching, loved working with them. There's so many of these cases. There's so many in Texas that it's unbelievable.
But well, every time I hear about a woman chopping toddlers' arms off or driving them into the water, they're on it. I mean, in every, that woman that drowned her kids in Houston, she was on it.
Yeah, Andrea Yates, she was on Effexor, yes. She was on 2 antidepressants, Effexor and Remeron, and she became psychotic on them, yes. It was terrible. Really, just... See, the thing about Effexor, too, is in the physician's desk reference noun, it says that one of the adverse reactions to Effexor is homicidal ideation. So where do you think Andrea Yates received these ideas?
No, it makes you homicidal.
Because it makes you homicidal, yes. Ideation means homicidal ideas. But, I mean, you can't have ideas. Sometimes you act on them, you know?
Listen, look, I've read the police reports. They'll pull up at a house and a guy's cutting his fingers off and he's on the stuff. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, it is bad.
Stay there. Got a break.